Sport has the power to change the world. Nelson Mandela. Sports are played worldwide and have been for around 3,000 years. For those 3,000 years, sports have been moving racial barriers that even the government couldn't. Sports plays a vital role in moving racial barriers and facing discrimination. And one speaker who put all those ideas into words was Nelson Mandela. Throughout his speech, Nelson Mandela used logos, pathos, and ethos, and multiple rhetorical devices to remind people all over the world that sports are not just about entertainment, but they have the power to achieve things that the highest form of government couldn't even dream of. His speech moved and motivated people to seek change. First, about Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela is a historical figure throughout the world. Many of us know him and we learn about him in our historical books. Second, he's a philanthropist and he's a motivational speaker. This is not his only speech. He's been giving speeches his whole life. He's also a global activist for human rights. Throughout his life, that was his goal. His goal was to make human rights for everyone. He wasn't from America, he's from South Africa, but even though he wasn't from here, he still helped everyone around the world. When and where? Nelson Mandela gave this speech at the Loris World Sports Awards in Monaco. He gave this speech on August 14, 2000. This speech was then named the speech that changed the world. This was the first ever World Sports Awards, and he was the first person to give out an award. They asked him to come and give a speech just because of how powerful his messages are.
It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where once there was only despair. It is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers. It lasts in the face of all types of discrimination. The heroes are standing with me are examples of this power. They are valiant, not only in the playing field, but also in the community, both local and international. They are champions, and they deserve the world's recognition. It has the power.
After listening to his speech, you realize that he's talking about how sports, like you and I, we play sports on a daily basis, or for some of us, and to him it's not just about entertainment for the people around the world. It's about how sports around the world come together, and by doing that, they have the power to break down barriers that even the government couldn't even imagine. On this slide is the significance then and now. The significance then, it was about 20 years ago, and at that time, there was still racial segregation, there was still racial discrimination, and there was an inequality in the world. His speech was he used his speech to make people motivate and think about how we can use sports to change the world. Today, there's still racial and inequality and racial discrimination today. It hasn't gone away. We've passed laws and we've passed amendments to abolish slavery, but there's still problems in the world today. And by the looks and by the actions of what's going on from last year to this year, it's still happening and it's not going away anytime soon. This video has 2.5 million views on YouTube. So clearly people are still looking back on his speech and looking for help and motivation on how to solve these problems in the United States. Wyatt will endure. These problems are not going away anytime soon. Nelson Mandela knew that when he gave his speech. He gave his speech in 2000 and he was a president at that time, president in South Africa at that time. So he knew that things weren't going away, and he knew the problems were still going to be around for a long time. And he wanted to give people an idea and a way to solve these problems in the United States. This speech was amazing, and people still look at it and reference it today. He knew that there was going to be problems, and he knew that people needed things. So this speech will endure because people will look back on it, and will give them a reason and a way to motivate them. Ethos, pathos, and logos. Pathos. He used pathos by playing on the soft spots of people's hearts. He uses how he talks about racial inequality and racial discrimination in the world. He says sports create hope where there was once despair. He talks about how in the world there's despair and there's problems and there's issues, but sports have the opportunity to fix those. And logos. He uses logos by saying he began life in poverty and he rose to the highest level of fame. He gives this award to a guy named Pelé in sports, who gave the award, the Lorsa Sports Award, and he gives this by talking about how he watched him grow up as a man. He watched him grow up into the person he is today. And lastly, ethos. He watched him play and grow up. He said to watch him play was to watch the delight of a child combined with extraordinary grace of man to a full. Rhetorical devices. He uses many rhetorical devices in his speech, but just three of them are personification. He uses personification when he says peace is not an actual weapon. Obviously, peace is not a weapon, but he's saying that peace has the power to do what weapons do. Next is anaphora. He repeats the word sport and it in his sentence. He says sport has the power to change the world, and it has the power to unite people. And last, he uses personification when he says sports can laugh in the face of discrimination. Obviously, sports can't laugh at people, but it just explains how sports have the power to fix those barriers. All in all, it is quite apparent that Nelson Mandela was an incredible person and a phenomenal speaker. Nelson Mandela was able to move people all around the world using logos, ethos, and pathos, and multiple rhetorical devices. He knew sport had the power to overcome all obstacles, and he wanted the people to know that too. Thank you for listening to my speech.